Header Footer Gallery is part of the New Media Caucus and is dedicated to promoting the creative output of our members by situating their work in thoughtfully curated exhibitions that take place across our entire web presence. New Media Caucus is an international nonprofit association formed to promote the development and understanding of new media art. We represent and serve artists, designers, practitioners, historians, theorists, educators, students, and scholars. Recognizing new media art to be inherently interdisciplinary, multimodal, and evolving, we support and advance a wide range of inquiry to catalyze further evolution of the field. The New Media Caucus is committed to extending and sustaining the diversity of our community, board, and membership, to promote an environment of equality, inclusion, and respect for difference. We prioritize inclusion as an ongoing collaborative process of growth that we continually address both within the caucus and in our field.
Welcome, everyone, to the 31st episode of Header Footer Presents. For this episode, it's going to be a little bit different. I am going to be doing a solo episode as Constanza is doing a trip. She's going to Czech Republic and like a lot of other places. She's sending me pictures of really exciting art. It's really fun. So in this case, it's just going to be me. So I'm sorry. And today what I want to talk about is archives, and not specifically like what each archive is doing, but the challenges that we're finding when dealing with archives in new media art. And one of the things I want to clear up is that we are not trying to criticize, or more accurately, I'm not trying to criticize any particular effort that's being made. I'm not trying to say one archive is better than another. All I'm trying to present here is this idea that there's very unique challenges to new media art that make archiving and collections and all these things that are adjacent to, well, not adjacent, necessary for new media art, have caused a lot of trouble and discussions and situations that are complicated, right? Because this is a thing that we don't talk about too much, but it's really interesting. And so, having said that, the first thing I want to talk about is a little bit of how conservation traditionally works. So, when you think of conservation, one of the things you want to do is stop damage or deterioration. Not the same thing, but you want to stop both of those things. So, what you're trying to do is to keep a book from disintegrating. You want to keep mold away in a statue. You want to keep it, again, without moss or things like that. You want to keep it in a good condition so it doesn't crumble away and disappear. And one of the first things that I think the public does not understand about that is that it's never about permanent conservation. Like it's impossible to preserve something forever. What we are doing is we're fighting entropy, meaning everything is going to eventually decay. We're trying to slow down that process. Now, for example, if you have an artifact, so for example, a remote, which might sound funny, but now we're seeing these things in museums. If you treat it as just an object, that you're like, oh, well, look, this is how people used to control their televisions before we all had screen eyes or whatever. You don't really need to show how it functions. So what we would like is to keep the rubber in the buttons, sorry for the green screen, the buttons from deteriorating. You would want the plastic to not become, that sticky, icky kind of thing texture that it gets after a while. You would want the letters, the icons, and the colors not to deteriorate, right? And so what would you do is, well, first you would study the situations behind the plastic and find out what's causing it to degrade. You would want to see that, you can handle this much light without deteriorating, which is also a whole conversation that we could have because there's a lot of misconceptions about that. So that's the things that we would do. And then you would put it into a nice little case. You would make sure that the humidity is the correct one. You would make sure that the light is the correct one, and so on and so forth. And it just exists there in a case, right? Or in a drawer, like specific collections drawer, not just a drawer, right? But then let's talk about fabrics, right? Like in fabrics, it's similar. You have this little bag, it has dyes in it, that's what you're hearing. Um, in that case, the conditions are different because the fabric is more delicate than plastic. So, well, you have to keep the moth away, but you have to make sure that the chemicals that you're using to keep the moths away is not damaging the fabric. You want to make sure that it doesn't fade, etc., etc., etc. Eventually, like time will catch up and it will disintegrate, but we're trying to slow that down as much as we can. And this applies to pretty much anything that's static. So, for example, a statue, a painting, a book, an artifact, a collectible, like even something like a playing card. They have to. We want to try and keep them, like, if we consider them a historical, not this thing, but we would want to keep it as protected as possible. And the best way to stop deterioration is to reduce the amount of handling that a thing undergoes, right? So, in what way is that? Well, you make sure that it doesn't get handled too much. You try to keep like limited access to it, or if it has to be handled, it will be done in a way that doesn't damage it. And handling is where most of the damage happens. Um, in my opinion, I don't know, but I have stories about this. So, for example, back in when I was doing my master's in museum studies, one of the things that you study is object handling, right? And we're there, and there's this professor who's teaching us how to handle artifacts, and he brings these little Greek statues, that are called quotas, I believe. And these statues are about this big, they're very delicate, and he's like asking us to move them between like trays and then pick them up. How to pick them up, because you just don't grab it, right? Like you have to be very careful because you have to make sure that you're not crumbling it. If you have to wear gloves, which kind of gloves? That's another misconception. Not every object has to be handled with gloves. One of the things that you least want to handle with gloves, even though everybody believes it, is books. And this is, well, new thing, but in general, it's believed that if you wear like fabric gloves, like cloth gloves, they catch on the pages and it's easier to tear a page off. If you're using rubber, then it sticks to your hand as well, or it's in either case you're adding a lot of variables. But not only that, one of the things is your fingers are very, very sensitive, so you can feel when it starts to strain. And if you're wearing gloves, that does not happen as early. So obviously you're losing some level of tactility. So you won't notice the tearing until it's too late. So that's why you don't wear gloves. So anyway, we're doing this thing, and we're at the end of the thing. He asks for a volunteer, and I say, I want to do this. I'm excited. It's like a plaything thing. In my mind, obviously, and this is the first mistake, but he knows this. So he asked me, like, grab the thing, and I'm doing like everything very choreographed, because that's the other thing. Like at the beginning, you're very, very too gingerly careful with it, and that's also a problem. But anyhow, so I grab the thing, I move it. Then he goes like, okay, now move it here. Now pass it on to me. And it's like, no. And that's one of the things he taught us. Like, you don't pass things to people. You put it on a thing, and then they take it from there. So I do that, and then he starts talking about like how you have to do the things. He corrects the mistakes I made, like being too careful, because then you become too aware. And anyways, and he tells you like, well, eventually you develop a sense for it. I'm thankful that I have to deal with that because I'm clumsy, very clumsy, and I'm afraid I would break more things than I did. Next story. But anyhow, so at the end of that, he grabs it like it's nothing, and he tosses it at me, and he goes, catch. And I'm like like juggling it like a cartoon. Eventually it falls on the floor and it breaks. Everybody, like, you can hear like the air being sucked out of the room. Like everybody was like, I'm like, oh shoot, I'm dead, because this is a practical institution. So we actually had a collection that we were working with as students. So I'm thinking I just broke something from like the 300, 600 before Christ, right? And he's like, no, it's a replica. At the time, obviously, like I'm too young, dumb, and uneducated on Greek sculptures to know that it is a plaster cast. it breaks, and he's like, you know that feeling. You don't ever want to feel that feeling in real life. So now you know that you have to be very careful. But you also have to be ready to react to these things, so on and so forth. And that's a story, like a thing about handling things that I really like because it taught me a lot, but it also highlights some of the issues and misconceptions that I had about these subjects. Now, why am I telling you this? Because um, for new media, some of those things do not apply. Or actually, they are counterproductive to the act of conserving new media. Now, why is that? Well, one of the things is that new media, that's the first thing. What is new media? New media, as we have talked about here, is like pretty much anything and everything in between. It's nothing and everything all the time. So, how you deal with new media art is very complicated because, first of all, one of the things that we tend to do is that we assume that whatever thing we're interacting with is the object. So, for example, if I give you a computer that has my art piece and it's, it moved the mouse, I to press keys and it does something. In some cases, and this is something that I've been told by other conservators, is that in the past, curators and conservators would get so hung up on the artifact that they would take the computer that the artist provided sometimes, so that they bought for the exhibition, and they would preserve, label, and catalog the mouse, the keyboard, the webcam, all these things, and forget about the software. In the particular cases, in some cases that, well, it's never good to forget the software, but in some cases it is worth considering keeping the computer or whatever, but not at all. So in that case that I was told about, the thing that happened is that nobody considered taking care of the computer itself as a computer. And what does that mean? Well, because it was part of a collection, you cannot just say, oh, let's change the motherboard. And then what happens is this computer is sold, it gets dusty inside. Yeah, they're cleaning it, whatever, but eventually all electronics will fail. So they try turning it on and it doesn't turn on, and the software is inside, but it's like, oh, okay, it doesn't work. Now what do we do? Again, because every piece of the computer was cataloged and sessioned into the collection, and you cannot just take things out of a collection just like that. Like, it's not like, oh, and that is also one of the issues with returning objects from collections to other places, because it lends itself to abuse. I'm not making a statement about like what is right or wrong, but it is practically a complicated process. You can't remove the hard drive and put it in another computer, right? You could theoretically plug in something and try and get it to work. So, but if the computer is not turning on, the only way you can get the data out is to take the hard drive out. So in this case, for example, the object may have been lost. Well, the object being the art. The art got lost. They had an object, a 386 computer that's like, right? So that is one of the first challenges that we face, is determining what is crucial and part of the artwork. Sometimes the artist will tell you. For example, I curated this piece by an artist called Nimrod Ashtaran, and his piece consists of several parts. One of those parts is a lightning rod. This lightning rod is placed outside, and it captures signals from around the space. It charges from those signals, and it sends them to a capacitor. And once this capacitor is filled, it sends a signal to a computer, and then the computer renders something on the screen. Now, that's the lightning rod. Then there's the computer itself. The computer itself is mostly a gaming computer. You know, those things with the RGB lights, very flashy. But in this case, it's on purpose. And one of the things is that when the capacitor is being filled, once it's full, the computer flashes itself, like it has lights inside that will light up, and that's what sends the signal to the computer to render a lightning bolt in the game, in the software that's being run, which is Unreal Engine. And in Unreal Engine, you're rendering this landscape that makes references to the artist's history and their research and all this. And so the idea is that the capacitor charges, sends a signal, the computer flashes, and then a lightning bolt falls, and you see that on the screen. In this case, the computer is a crucial part of the artwork, and you would preserve that, right? Like you would try to keep it because the modifications that the artist made, the fact that it's highly linked with the thing. You could run the thing without the flashing lights, but in this case, we can make a very good argument that this is a part of the thing. Now, that's all cool. But if I accession the computer and then in the future, not right now, because right now we can fix it, but in the future, how do we fix that? Like, do we put it in the catalog as a replaceable part? Sure, we can. Are we qualified as a museum to handle that? Not in the practical, because that's the other thing. Practicality and standards are not always meeting at the same level because every standard in conservation is written in something that happened, right? So what do we do? How do we deal with an object that we know will break down super soon? So, well, maybe we say, okay, well, we can change the lights, we can change this, we can change that. Some conservators will not have a problem with that. I'm one of those. But there are conservators who will be like, no, we cannot do this. This is an artifact and it has to stay as it is. So what do we do? Do we make a copy? And is that copy authorized? So there's all these questions. So because the other option is like, okay, you don't want to touch this computer? Fine, keep that computer as is and preserve it for God knows why, if you're never going to turn it on, because it would get damaged or it doesn't work anymore. But okay, sure, keep your computer. We'll make another computer that does the same thing. Sure. Will the department allow it? Will an ethics committee say, no, this is not allowed? There's so many questions because you're also messing, and this is the problem is like we're messing with money, and that makes a problem, right? Because it's like, oh, you're creating a duplicate of an irreplaceable object, and there's all these arguments about the Sisyphus ship, the Theseus ship, sorry, and all these questions. So, what do we do? And that's one of the problems that archives keep finding themselves in, because the archive itself has to account for this. So, there's been some efforts, like, for example, John Ippolito and Richard Reinhardt. Ippolito has been very active in this. He's worked at, I believe it's the Guggenheim, but I could be wrong. It could be the Getty, but no, I'm pretty sure it's the Guggenheim in their collections program, because I've seen the collections standards for the Guggenheim, and they're very similar to what Ippolito has been writing. So I'm pretty sure that's where he is. He was. Anyway, but in his view, these things are considered parts and elements, and he can, when he accessions something, it has this granularity to it, but it also has one thing that I think has been missing from a lot of archives, and that is artist intent. And what they do is they come up to the artist and they are like, what can we do when this stops working? Do you want it to just completely stop working, or do you want it fixed? And if you want it fixed, how do you want it fixed? Because there's also the question of, should we try to keep the original working, or can we just make something that looks like it, right? And as someone who designs exhibitions as well, I can tell you that a lot of art works under the premise of smokes and mirrors. For example, there was this mechanical piece, this robotic arm that was sweeping oil, or we're told it was oil, but I'll get to that, where it was supposed to be collecting its own oil. It would get frustrated, and when it got frustrated, the oil would be lost, and then eventually, with its frustration, it would kill itself, basically. Now, that is not true. And it's funny because that's the example that Getty uses in explaining how they accession objects. And if you read that, you will realize that the liquid is just a liquid that they made to look like oil, have the texture of oil, but the color of blood, because It's meant to have this visual metaphor. So it is all smokes and mirrors. So in a way, and this has nothing to do with a piece, but like in a way, we can do that with technology. We can make things to look like they're doing what they're doing, even though they're not really doing it, right? Is that an acceptable thing? Well, we have to ask the artist, and that's pretty cool. If the artist says yes, like it's what we would call a reinterpretation of the piece, right? Because a recreation would be like one-to-one almost, or as close as we can get to it, and that can always be complicated because of things like the software itself not being available for that, right? Like Flash, for example. Flash is gone. This is the most common example, but Flash is gone, and we've lost a lot of the interactivity that came with it. Whatever came after, like I'm doing that, like animations with HTML and CSS, which was pitched as the substitute for Flash. And from experience, I can tell you it's not it. The things I could do with Flash with my limited tool set of skills and knowledge is vastly superior to what I can make in HTML and CSS, even with better understanding of both of them. Like it's just not a good tool for animation in 3D. Like, yeah, there's things like processing and all that, but you keep adding layers and layers of complexity. Flash was very, very simple. So Flash, we lose Flash, and all these pieces that were made in Flash, things from pop culture like Badger Badger or Peanut Butter Jelly Time, have become abandoned in a way. And some of them can be replayed. People have been making efforts, particularly Newsgrounds. I don't know if you all remember that website. They're trying to rescue as much as they can. But like those are easy. But what about the games? Things like Industrious games that were made in Flash. Like those are harder to save. For example, how to build a mousetrap. It's not playable anymore, I believe. Maybe there's a version now, but that required a rebuilding of the thing. So that places a problem in an archive, because when you're trying to stop change and you're trying to stop degradation, this idea of upgrading or redoing is anathema to, or anathema, I don't know. It's not done. It's not what we are supposed to be doing. And that creates a lot of issues to us as conservators. So what has happened, because of all these issues and many, many, many more, we could talk about it for ages. But one of the biggest issues that comes from all this is the problem of everyone is doing it their own way. And because of that, we have thousands of archives. Well, maybe not thousands, but like at the very least, we have tens and tens and tens of these things. So I'm going to share this webpage. So, well, it's not found. I know about this thing. So Isaiah Symposium is one of the big new media things, more technical than others, but they do have art. I mean, they're all about art, but they're more focused on the technology side of it, in my opinion. Anyways, so with them, they had this one in 2022 that was about archives. And one of the things that they highlighted is that there's so many of them, right? Like, look at this. And some of this are just conversations that they had. So let me find it here. It should be 2022. The second summit on new media archiving. I was present for this one. This one I couldn't because it was in Korea, I believe. But yeah, so I see 2022. And they're talking about how much stuff there is. And the problem is every single one has its own data structures. Every single one has its own metadata. Everyone has its own form of doing it. So what has resulted in this is that they cannot talk to each other. So if you cannot share information easily. And that's a big problem. So, for example, we're going to go through a few of them. So this is the ICEA one. This is their own archive. And you can look at all their workshops. You can look at the things that they did. But you can see some of it is just conversations about panels and things. A compilation of ICEA things. There's a glossary, blah, blah, blah. It's a very, like, interesting way of cataloging. See, for example, this is the 2022 possibilities. So you can go here and you can look at the numbers, you can look at the things, the notes, the opening ceremony, the main ceremony, the closing, the themes, the sub themes. So they're more concerned with collecting their own events, right? And as an aside from that, like, because people curate for that, like they present shows and artworks and all that, uh, there's a catalog. And this catalog is like their archive. And obviously, a hard copy of an archive is a really beautiful thing because they're more resilient than digital ones. Something that, with what's happening in the US, has become very, very apparent because nobody wants to rely on Google or American companies for their data storage. Because what happens when they start blocking or deleting content that doesn't fit the administration's very, like, insidious policies, like, for example, banning the word trans when it doesn't have to just mean trans people, but also transgenic, trans everything. So what happens if they go through our files, our artworks, and they see something that's like the transcontinental highway or the transcontinental railway, and we have a piece about that, or we create something like that, and then they delete it, right? So in this case, that's why a hard archive is really good, or a hard something catalog, everything. It's better than nothing, right? But these things are not collecting the actual works. They're talking about the works. Oh, Chenny Choi. As you know, I've curated like several shows for her. But yeah, so you see, for example, spectral landscapes like Berger. We have keywords, and then we have a description of the work, mostly by the artist, and that's all we have. Is it better than nothing? Absolutely. Is it perfect? No. But I'm not here to judge that. I'm just saying, like, we have these issues, right? So let's look at another one. So now we have the SIGGRAPH collection, archive, and this one is a little bit different, as you can see. And also, one of the things that you will notice is they all look like they were built in the 1990s. I don't know why that is, but so we have the conferences, its contributors, exhibitors, experiences, publications, the collectibles. So, for example, let's go to view all. And this is what they have as collectibles, not the artworks themselves. Again, this is more about the history. Here's the SIGGRAPH collection. So again, it's a hard archive, meaning a physical archive collection. But what happens? Well, you have to go there to actually, well, you can contact them and ask for like photocopies or things like that. But obviously, again, a limited system that makes it very, very hard for us to talk about it. Let's look at data view. Yes. See what I mean? So it gives us a lot of issues with how these things are handled. Again, new media collection has some stuff, but mostly it's about themselves. Let's look at the ZKM. The ZKM is one of the more interesting ones because this is an actual museum. It's here in Karlsruhe, where I live. And they have a fantastic collection, and they don't show it. Well, they do. They have an exhibition right now, but most of their work is just kept in storage. It's a really interesting thing. But let's go to the collection. This is a very outward-looking collection. I mean, this particular website, not the collection that they themselves have. But let's look at the active collection. So there's all these things. You can search by title, by categories, by range, by letter, whatever. We're just going to click on something that looks interesting here. Karl Kovans, it's 12 Stücke, so 12 pieces, I believe. Yeah, so we have this thing. We have a picture. We can make the picture big. And then we go to artist, Karl Kovans, title, 12 Stücke, not translated, which is a choice. Year 1988. Look, this is one of those things. Like, I am a native Spanish speaker. I'm also a native English speaker, but and I speak German-ish. I strongly believe that we do need to do the things in English because it is easier for it's already like so prevalent. And yeah, well, there's colonialism issues and all that, but at the same time, it is easier for me to read something by a Chinese academic or curator if they write it in English than me having to learn Chinese, right? Um, English is so prevalent that we all understand at least a little bit of it, and we can find easier ways to communicate. It's a common language nowadays, kind of like French was back in the day. But yeah, so anyway, so let's keep going. So we have the year, we have the category, we have the format, analog video. Okay, what does that mean? It's probably recorded. So material and technique, U-matic. So there we go. We know that it's a U-matic, it's color, it's stereo. It's dimensions / duration. This gets tricky when you have mixed artifacts. So 9 minutes and 47 seconds. The contributors, it's like past with the music, and it's in the collection instrumental. I really don't know what that is. And that's it. Well, we can look at the artist. So it's a little bit linked. And we know that it was born in 1951 in Vienna, Austria, and he's an artist at the collection. That's it. It's better than nothing. But it doesn't tell me much about the work. What is it? What is it? What does it do? What is it about? I don't know. I can just see this, and I'm pretty sure this moves, but I'm not sure. I don't know unless I have to go ask for access. Hope they give me access, and then go and see it. If we go to their program, we can look at their exhibitions, and right now they have the story that never ends. This is the closest thing to a permanent collection. And it's not permanent. It's just going to run from April 5th till September 20th. I highly recommend if you're in Germany that you make the trip to Karlsruhe and look at this, because this is history. This is real important history. Then we have the Valdemar Cordeiro constellations. I hope I pronounced that correctly. It's Portuguese. Well, there's Brazilian, but the language. Again, it's a really interesting one. I like more what his, I believe it was his sister did. Which is also here, and it's a better, honestly, I believe it's better work. Let me see if they mentioned the sister here. No, but they have the pieces. Then let's go back. Then this was made by my boss, Choose Your Filter. It's about the history of browser art, and it's really interesting because there's nothing about browser art. We're literally in a position of making the history, and it's really cool. Also, highly recommend that you go and visit it. It's almost running out. Well, not, but you have a little bit less time. Then 200 years at KIT, 100 parts. KIT, or KIT, is my university, my institute. This one is more about like the history of the university itself, which was 2 universities until it fusion Dragon Ball Z styled with another university, and then they became KIT and renamed themselves. That one is optional. And then Fellow Travelers, this was by Alistair. Alistair is the head of the museum. And he did this exhibition, which is really interesting because it's more about community rather than actually like the collection of the ZKM. It's about how communities survive and use technology and distribute themselves, all these things, right? It's a very interesting program that I'm not completely familiar. This one, I haven't seen it. I don't know where it is in the exhibition. Voice of Women is a Voice of Freedom. I really don't know what this one is. Then we have the ZKM gameplay next level. This is the actual permanent exhibition, as you can see here. And it's about video games. It's a little bit outdated. It's interesting, but honestly, more could be made with it. Although this thing is playable, by the way. This is kind of cool. Is this the one that's playable? I think it is. Yes, it is. It's the guy. Okay, so yeah, this is a playable thing, and it spans the whole wall. It's gigantic. It's pretty fun. Then there's the playable ZKM level 5. So it's again with video games. It's just a little side thing for it. Then this is actually not the ZKM. This is the Kunsthalle, which is the art museum that's part of Karlsruhe, but it's being renovated, so they moved everything into the ZKM. Anyhow, so Their archives are very limited. Their collection is not out on display all the time, as you can see here. So again, complicated way to get in reach with them. They have a research library, which is also interesting because it has all the Peter Bible things. But again, it's a research one, so you can't take anything out. You have to go there, blah, blah, blah. Next one. Then we have FILE, the Electronic Language International Festival. And, well, need I say more? It's broken. Let's click on one. It's broken. And that's the problem with digital archives and archives that are not shareable. What's happening is we are completely losing things. This is already like dubious now, but let's look at it. So it has the qubit of the file 2024 qubit of quantum synthetic A, like Then it has this description. It is in Portuguese, so that's already a barrier for a lot of people. I can read it. I can understand like 95, maybe 80% of it. But yeah, so it really doesn't tell me much, right? Let's go back. Workshops, books, artista, archivo. Here it is, the archive. Okay, so the archive is a little bit better. So artistic. Oh, it translated itself. Cool. Okay, so this one's in Brazil, obviously. So let's look at one of the works just to get the idea. Oh god. Okay, so this is actually Mexican. Okay, so this is Cascade. There's no group name, but there's Dora. Sorry, Partilotti. Oh, maybe no her. Mexico from 2016, and then it's like a description is a consummation of a concept that can be summed up as two paradoxical visual possibilities. On the one hand, the continuous flow that converges into another form. On the other hand, the aesthetic sculpture. So this is like the typical artist talk. Not that that's a problem, but it's very obtuse. And then when you're trying to write art history, this is almost not effective. So then you can look at these little GIFs, which is actually better than most things. This is actually pretty neat, and I think it's a good idea. So probably what happens is that there's some bug in the file thing. Oh, it's actively translating with Google Translate. Okay, so the event, where it was, the collections, group, what is called, interactive type, it's not interactive. But again, very limited, very, very limited. Like, was it coded? Was it just an animation? Because, and this is the thing with glitch. Is it glitch aesthetic or is it an actual glitch? Was it done with data moshing? Was it done with what? We don't know. This is all we have. We have a PDF book with a description. It's probably going to be the same thing. Next one. I mean, it's, again, pretty interesting what they're doing. I really do like the idea of making animated GIFs of these things. I mean, exploit the web, right? Next one. So this is MemoDoct, the Posthuman Archive. I'm guessing this is Polish. Can't tell. But let's go to Biblioteca, which is probably the one thing I can translate. Digitani. Well, I can't read this, but okay. So themes. This is not really an archive if you look at it. About the project, it's a sample repository of contemporary media art practices and research. So this is more about practices. Digital art nomad. So this is about the people, and then let's click here. So it's case studies. But the fact that I'm struggling to find something. So there's a CD-ROM. Again, date, author, where it was made. So it's Yugoslavia. So maybe this is Yugoslavian. Then you have this thing, whatever it is. And then there's a, I'm assuming, presentation. And I don't know what, okay. And then there's an abstract, which, let's see if it kicks in again. Where's that translate? Is this related to this? I don't know. So yeah, again, it's an archive, but it's very, very, very limited. Oh, so yeah, there's a CD-ROM presentation and a CD-ROM computer. See what I mean? They accessioned the computer, which is irrelevant to this piece. I'm 99% sure. So again, different projects have different interests. Some of them are just like, oh, we have these things, and it is something. I'm actually going to keep this one open. So now we have the Ars Electronica one. Ars Electronica, most of us know about it. What I don't understand is where's the collection? This is how to get to it. So let's go to organization. I know they have an archive. Hard to find, as you can see. Media archive. Okay, so here. Finally found it. So we have the prize winners. Let's look at that. That's probably really interesting. So let's take one at random. Third world, the bottom dimension. So this one has a series of cutscenes, I believe. No, screenshots, I mean. And I want to know what these little symbols are. Let's get closer. Oh, it's just the symbol of a picture. Okay, so it tells you that it's a picture. Maybe if there's video, they would tell you. But again, why is there no video or a demo? So the catalog text, we have a link to a video. Oh, there's a video. Cool. We have the credits. This is really good because it's rare that it's one person. Like, Gabriel Mazan is probably like the directing force for everything, but there's people who did things and we should recognize them. And then we have the biography. So there's like some little bio for the artist, and then finally a jury statement why it was chosen. So this is one of the better ones, I believe, in my opinion. Let's look at this one, for example. So this is Keba. Really cool installation. So let's see. Context. Other unknown solutions. So what is this? Immerse itself in the mind of the Keba Group AG and its innovation department. Okay, so this is no, this is not it. That's just like a piece of exhibition space, actually, literally. What is this? Okay, so I thought this was gonna be like all the artist things. Best practice. So this is an archive of things that they've done, like as programs and all that. Let's see. Oh, it's okay. I can see. It's just a photo archive and it tells you everything. Okay, then we have the print archive. So this collection of everything that they printed was really useful, really nice. And then the video archive. So let's look at this one. This looks like our artwork. No. So interesting. Obviously, they only keep the things from their works. Let's look at another one. This one. Again, images, maybe some videos, a catalog text, and that's it. It's better-ish in some ways, not great in others. There has to be a balance between artistic intention and technique, and I think no archive is meeting that of the ones we've looked at so far, but I'm going to keep this one for later. I'm going to close this one because it's irrelevant right now. Then we have V2. V2 is this really interesting webpage. I really like it, how it looks. When they have works, here we go. So let's look at their work archive. Let's just click open. So this one has a little bit of curatorial text, just you can see. Then we have the event it was in, and then the people related. That's it. Again, how does it work? What does it look like? Because this is like a wish list in a way. It's not really telling me what's happening with it. And I'll show you what I mean in a bit. This one, oh boy. So Media Art Base is apparently it requires a login. So we're going to skip this one. Then we have Rhizome. Rhizome is one of those organizations that's really been doing crazy stuff in terms of documentation. They created the web recorder, which is this tool that we use at New Media Caucus for recording our exhibitions when they can be recorded, which honestly, with all the crazy things I've been doing, has not been a good idea. It just doesn't record the 3D spaces. And we actually need someone to do like 3D walkthroughs of all that. Okay, so we have God Love, which is a really interesting piece that's collects like several things. So this one has a really nice browser that's also in the ZKM, which is called Eden, I believe. So we have a description of what God Love is like a collection of works. It's not a work, so that's tricky. Okay, so let's look. So it has the meta, at least we have an artist, a title, Then we have an emulated environment. So let's click on that one and see what they emulated. So see how ZKM is a little bit interesting in the way, like it likes a lot of the details, but you can use the thing and then you can do your own work on that. And I'm pretty sure if you contact them, you could get like some extra documentation. It's taking forever. While that happens, I'm gonna close this.
A few moments later.
Wow, and it's running it on the desktop. Okay, this is wild. So for those that don't know what's happening, this is why it's taking forever. This is actually running a computer inside my computer. Yeah, see, it's Windows. It even kept the silent. And then they have this thing, and then we click on it, and it's loading. So there's a lot of loading happening because it's loading the web page, it's loading the simulator. Then
the next day.
Sorry, we're getting lost on this one, but it's a really cool piece of history. So I'm gonna lower the volume a little bit. I don't know if you can hear this. I'm pretty sure you can't, but that's better for the podcast, honestly. Okay, so you click, a hand comes out, and then I'm assuming it's gonna open eventually. So yeah, so let's just real quick talk about this. They're making the whole thing usable, or not the whole thing, because probably there's parts of it that cannot be restructured. But it's a different approach to archiving. They're archiving the actual thing and making it usable. So that in itself is pretty clever and really interesting. I am going to save this thing for me for later. I'm going to keep it there. Then we have the ADA. This is the more famous one. This is the first one I came across. So if I click the archive, let's just click on search. Let's click on one, anthroposcope. So this one again, collectives, who it is, the piece, the year, a link to the thing, then the images, which they have their own tool about it, apparently. Hello? What do I do here? Start? No. So it's empty. Haha. So this one doesn't work. It's like a collection thing. You make your own collection. And then, okay, so it has documentation. So it's like images. It also has a description. Let me see before we do that, let's click here. Top takes me here. Okay. Information takes me here. Documents takes me here. Oh, okay, I see. Description. Okay. This is one of the more complete ones. It has a description. It's an interactive installation involving a microscope, a real plant, and a fingerprint. So it tells you the function of it. What does it mean? We have no clue. It has the aesthetics. The keywords can help us guess that a little bit. So it's bioart, animated, illusionary, visual, displays, interfaces, body sensors. So that's pretty cool. Then it has the hardware, which again, in this case, it is important because the binocular microscope and the plant EEG signal interface are probably like very like niche things. So yeah, you would want to conserve those, right? The computer, it's not as important. That's why I just say computer. As long as it runs the things, I think that's what they care. The high resolution monitor. This is a interesting thing to question because is it a CRT? Probably not. But what is it? Is it a 4K? Is it a 1080p? 970? We don't know. And then the interface, how it works, and then the software that it's running, but it doesn't really tell you. So it just says a real-time 3D rendering. This is the part that's like a little bit deficient because it could be something like it's running, I don't know, bioscan 25 something. Like those things would be really useful. Does it run on Windows, Linux, what? And then exhibitions of it. This is really good because maybe some of that information that I don't have, I could ask some of these people. And then the bibliography, again, super useful because then it gives you these data things. So I think it's a pretty good archive. The ADA, actually, they've been updating it. It used to be a little bit more primitive looking. Now it's much nicer. And I highly recommend that you just go in and look at the things they have. But I'm going to get to something in a bit. Like now we have Aurora Archive. So this is augmented reality in art and culture. So a lot of VR. This is actually, I'm going to save this as well. And you can search them and then you can go to it and we're going to wait. Except only essential cookies because we don't want cookies. Mirror Planet DA, Michel Adolf and Beate Gärtner. So this is a project, and then you click, and it takes you to a PDF that explains like It's in German as well. Okay, so it explains like how it works. But the artist doesn't make this thing. I don't think if they have it. Let's look at another one. So that's the same thing. Let's look at this one. There's a flyer. There's a trailer. Okay, so this is an exhibition. Can we look at works? Do they have that? Very alternative. I'm gonna save this one because this is Kunsthaus Kloster Gravenhurst. So Kloster is where the monks live, like a monastery, and Kunsthaus is a house of art monastery Gravenhurst. So yeah. Oh, so it's the Gravenhurst Monastery Art House. Yeah, that's what it is. Okay. So, and then we have Radiance. I actually have some experience researching on this one, and it's not the best. It's not the worst. So what you do is you have to actually have a VR headset. You click on the thing in the headset. So you see VR experience for MetaQuest 2. And then you have the credits, you have the duration, a description of what it is, and some images, a video link, and yeah. This bio of the artist and the categories. You can actually play these things if you use the actual app. The problem that this one has is that you have to pay per experience. So every single one of these costs you money, and it's a few euros actually. So it's a situation, and you have to get like a institution to support you for it. It's a good archive. It's an interesting archive, but it doesn't really say much about the pieces. Like, for example, I was looking at this studio visit. It's called. It's one of the AI performance pieces that I've been researching. And all the information about it is not on the app. It's not in here, I believe. Let's see. Can I search the... Yeah. Oh, I would have to know his name. Their name. No, it's his. Oh, boy. So you can see how this is a little bit hard to search. I don't think there's a search category here. Oh, let's do it to performance. There's not that many. So let's click on performance. There we go. And then we need to find the orc. There's more than I thought. It's no longer here. Oh, fun. That's gonna create situations for me. Anyhow, I actually seen this one, Martina Menengon. This one is at the ZKM. And it's interesting because in the actual show it scans you. It's a different piece, but inspired by that. Oh, no, this is a different piece. Okay, same artist, different piece. Yeah, so as you can see, a little bit limited again. Like this one at least has some more data, images, the video link about the artist, the categories. Okay, so having looked at all these archives, here's what I think is happening. Some of them just want to collect and say, we had this as shown. Some of them do their, here's my complete collection of artworks. And you can look at them, but I haven't really gone in depth and added like a lot of information. Here's a picture of it, and that's it. So one of the problems with new media art is the issue of epiphenomenal qualia, which means to truly understand something, you have to experience it. And this is a philosophical thought experiment, but if you think of imagine a colorblind scientist that exists, well, not colorblind scientist, a scientist that lives in a world that's black and white, but they know that color exists, and they have all the explanations, the chemical, physical explanations of how color works, like it excites the cones and the rods on your eye, and it sends certain wavelengths are interpreted as certain colors, right? And red has like this frequency, and blue has this frequency, and they could probably look at like a graph and say, oh, this is red, this is blue, this is pink, whatever. But they don't truly understand color until they actually go into a world with color. And in that situation, will they be able to interpret it correctly? And that's a problem with new media art. Actually, there's also another, it was a philosophical question, but now it's been solved. People who are blind, who have never seen a circle and a square, but they can identify them by touch. If you give them a square piece of something like a 3D printed square and a 3D printed circle, like a flat one, and you give them to them, they can tell you, oh, this is a square, this is a circle. Several people were whose eyesight was restored were then asked which one is the circle without touching, which one is the circle, and which one is the square. And they cannot comprehend it. They don't have this association. So the same thing happens in a less dramatic way with new media art. If I give you a video game and I ask you to look at a screenshot of the video game, you're losing a lot of what it is. If I give you a video, you're losing a little bit less. And depending on the video game, you can probably get like the whole thing. For example, The Last of Us, where the game is, okay, you're shooting things, and then there's cutscenes, and it's basically a movie with some interactive act elements. But if I gave you something like Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons, or It Takes Two, or Split Fiction, 3 games by Joseph Fares, where the actual act of playing is part of the narrative, where, for example, you control one brother with one control and one brother with the other one, and once something happens and one of the brothers becomes captured or something, you lose control of this side of the control. You feel that disconnection and you feel the missing brother. That is different, and that cannot be felt. Even if I describe it, it's not the same. I cannot highlight how important it is for someone to play a video game like that to fully understand it. And so our archives are not communicating those things. In a way, what's happening is we have a picture, we have like this is a video game about, like, let's look at Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons, so you can see the descriptions. Sorry for that. I just my microphone. And they actually just re-released it with better graphics if you want to play that. But let's look at the description in let's go first in Wikipedia. So the narrative takes place in a fantasy field with fantastic creatures such as orcs and trolls, where 2 young brothers set out on a journey to find a cure for their father's illness. That's it. That's the description. Okay, let's go to something a little bit more commercial. So let's go to Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons, the remake. Let's look at the description when they try to sell you this game. Guide 2 brothers through an epic tale of discovery, loss, adventure, and mystery. Their fate is suffering from a terminal illness, so brothers travel to blah, blah, blah. To protect others and overcome obstacles. Critically acclaimed planet, in remakes, remaster features, categories, embark on a fantastic epic, Okay. Nothing. Oh, now they made it co-op. That's not the way this game should be. So never do this. That's interesting. But they don't talk about the control. Now, let me go and show you something. I'm going to mute it because I don't want to get hit with, yeah. So, and this is a problem with the, nothing about the game tells you that so when you're running, you're moving both controllers independently, one to the left to make them both go that way. I have a control here I can show. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second. So in the controller, this is one brother, this is the other. This is like one control of the brother. This is, or actually it's these. Yeah, it's these ones. So when you're playing, you're moving one brother this way, you're moving this way. So you have to learn how to coordinate. And that is part of the the point of the game. Right? Like this learning to cooperate as brothers, as siblings, right? And then they take away one and you feel this lack of cooperation, you feel this lack of connection, and that is never mentioned. So an archive that collects this and doesn't include those details, even if it gives you the date, the time, who it was that made it, who composed the music, it's not complete. And that's a problem with the archives. The archives, each one has their own goals, their own interests, and their own budget. And this is what's creating the problems with archives. And as you can see, that is not the fault of the people because no one knows how to do this. What I am trying to do is to create a standardized form. But the problem is nobody likes these ideas of standardization, because one of the things is like, oh, well, new media art is unique and everything is a case by case. Yeah, there it is a case by case. But I believe that we can find like some common ground, or we're going to run into this problem. Because what happens when the ADA, for some reason, runs out of funding? What happens when nobody, or there's a complete change in the philosophies of an institution, and they decide that they no longer care about documenting to that degree? It might be the better way, and they decide they want to document better, but are they going to go back and do that for the old things? So what is needed is data structures that are shareable. Maybe you'd have your own way of interpreting, but we need a way to communicate in standards. And there's people, like I said, like John Paulo, Richard Reinhardt, Alessandro Ludovico, who are making this argument from coming from different perspectives. But the idea is we have to be able to share. And one of the things that also would make this so much easier is if these platforms were accessible to all, because that's the other thing. Me as a Mexican, I have a much more limited access to these things. First of all, language barrier. I don't speak English, I don't speak French, I don't speak German. Well, I do, but I mean, this is a metaphorical me. I may not have the money to make my own archive, and I may not have the artistic cash to or reputation to get included in these platforms. And that means that some really great pieces will get lost in the way, and it shouldn't be. And the problem is, as always, that this affects people of color and minorities the most. Because if you are a rural Mexican, or you're a Mexican in Oaxaca who doesn't have the resources that a Mexican in Mexico City or New York or Germany, like I do, you are dependent on two things: me finding you and me adding you, or you somehow getting out and making it enough that your work is recognized, collected, and saved. And maybe by the time it is, the work that you wanted to preserve is gone. So we have this problem. There are ways out of it. I've always been a fan of federated instances, and I think that is the path that we should be taking, creating a database system that's flexible, that's customizable, but it's also interconnected and federated. That, what does that mean? Is imagine something like Twitter, where you create your, oh no, actually Twitter is the wrong example. Let's use an actual real example. Let's use Mastodon. So you create your own instance of Mastodon, your own server, and within that server, you have this basic core that is, let's call it our Fedi base, right? Like we call it the federated database with our Fedi base. I have a version of this Fedi base, and it has all these fields that I can fill out. These fields have been generated by someone originally to their best understanding of new media and its challenges. But me, I get my own version of this Fedi base, and there's a common language that I can learn, probably XML or something, and I can modify the fields and add new fields and new relationships and new ways. But my archive exists within my thing. I have control of it. I can add my things. I can modify my things, but nobody else can modify them. But what can happen is another person with their own Fedi database or Fedi base can connect to mine, see my things, and they can request a copy of it. And then maybe they want to code extra fields. For example, a field for research that they have made, like original research, and they can add their thing there. And then the other person can see these modifications, the original person that owned it, and be, oh, I want that. And then just make a pull request and get that information and that field added into their database. And what this would create is a system. And I mean, obviously, I know half of it is possible. I don't know the full thing, but it would solve so many problems. For example, storage space, because you could also create a fake entry, well, not fake, but like a fake entry into your database that it's just basically mirroring what's in the other database. So you don't have to have the server space to hold their copy, but you could also make it so, oh, I do want a copy. Kind of like what you do when you create a playlist on Spotify and you share it to everyone and everybody just gets a copy of it. They're not actually storing the database. They're just having a link to that one. But you can also save it in your own and make it your own, and then you can add mutant songs to that playlist, and then that other person can see that and be like, oh, I want to get this. So a more powerful version of that is what we should have as a database, and I don't believe it would be that difficult as long as we make it cheap or free to access. If we make it easy, obviously the initial push will require a lot of money, but there's already a lot of money being pushed into these databases. Now, would the ADA want to leave behind what they already have? No, obviously not. But we can make it so there's a way to take from the most common database. I mean, if you do a comma separate value, and then you get into this. There's solutions for all of these things, I believe. I think it could be done. We just need the will, and the hardest part is the money. But if we don't do this, we're going to have 7,000 different databases that have 7,000 different interests and goals, and they bow to different masters. And what will happen is that if one of them goes, a lot of information is gone forever, especially in digital, because we don't have the things. So as a closing, I think this is my pitch in the end of why I criticize databases so much, is because I think that there's a new way that we could do. And the funny thing is, I believe that if we started it from the outside and then we brought the big ones, they would be forced to use it, rather than the other way around, which is what we usually do, which is these very high level things are really expensive, really inaccessible. If we make a drive and say, hey, look, this is very cheap. I mean, a web page and a hosting space, it's not that expensive. It will only require for what you want to upload to it. And the cool thing is, if you can't handle it, you can make it like freely open, notify everyone, and then someone else can like pull it from you, hold to it. Your authorship and your everything contributions are preserved, even if you can no longer pay for it. And that is what will make information on new media art and new media art itself resilient. Because if you're able to save the code and the workings, and we open ourselves to the idea of recreating more than we already are, new media art is not as fragile as it is right now. So with all that said, I want to thank you all for listening to me ramble about this for so long. And I forgot one thing. We forgot to thank the New Media Caucus and the board for giving us budget. You may have noticed that I sound way much better. No longer sounds like I'm recording in a bathroom. So now we have headsets, we have microphones, and new cameras. And I want to thank Nick, our head of or president for New Media Caucus, and everyone at the board that supported this idea. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.